So it's my anniversary this week, and you might be thinking, great, how long have you been married? That's not the anniversary I'm actually talking about. 6 years ago this week, February 21st, I legally changed my first name. Now you might be thinking, why? So my story goes like this. When I was growing up, I wasn't a great person. I wasn't the best Christian. I was actually living a double life. So I was a Christian on a Sunday, or I was just a Christian when I felt like it, and the other times I didn't treat people particularly well. You might find a few people to talk to about that one, but God one day challenged me really, really strongly, and he said, you can't do this anymore, you need to change, and you need to either be a Christian or not. And I really wanted to stay as a Christian, but I didn't want to continue the double life that I was living. When I was 18, I went to do a gap year in Northern Ireland, and I felt that God was saying to me, Saul in the Bible used to be a really rubbish person, let's face it, and one day he changed, and he needed to know that he was a new person, and people needed to know that he was a different person as well. And so God challenged him to change his name, which is what happened. God changed his name. Now, growing up, I used to adopt the nickname Lou because I just felt like I needed that identity. All my other friends were able to change, their real name and shorten it down. So I had a friend called Danielle, and we called her Danny, and so on. And I really felt like I needed a nickname as well. And so growing up, I was called Lou quite a lot, but quite often that was just for the people that really wanted to. It wasn't something that everybody did. So when I moved to Northern Ireland, God challenged me and said, if you want to feel like you've really changed, then use that name going forward, and you can have that new identity. You can be changed. And that's what I did. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect in any way. And after a year, I got back from Ireland, and some of the old stuff did come back in. I wasn't always a great person. I'm still not always perfect. Nobody is perfect, unfortunately. But I felt different because I'd got that new name, and it was really difficult for some people to accept that was what I wanted to be called full time. So fast forward on quite a lot of time to 6 years ago, so 2016. Gareth and I had been married a couple of years, so our wedding service actually contained my real legal name back in the day. I don't actually use that name, obviously, and I don't really tell it to people because some people think, oh, I'll just call you that. Well, that's not okay for me, is it? Because actually that is a dead name to me. It's not something I associate with myself. Can you imagine Saul changing to Paul and people calling him Saul, and he would just associate that with all the negative stuff that he'd done in his life? And that's how I feel. If people call me that, then it takes me back a long time to who I used to be, and it doesn't feel great. Which leads me on to my next point. Recently, I've been thinking about the past and the things the mistakes I had made, and I've recently realised that God forgave me a long time ago, which is amazing, isn't it? God forgives us for the things that we do wrong, but I hadn't forgiven myself, which is ridiculous in some ways. But God sent his son Jesus to earth to die on a cross so that we can be forgiven. Us mere mortals can be forgiven, but we don't forgive ourselves. We don't accept that forgiveness fully. And I've been carrying around a little bit of guilt from the last however many years, and that's just silly. God has had the grace to forgive me for the mistakes I have made. He's changed my name. He's given me this new identity, and I've tried my best most of the time to live up to that and to be a great person. And I hope I do justice to that. But at the same time, I need to forgive myself for the things that I've done wrong, just like God has forgiven us. And today I just want to encourage you and challenge you to forgive yourself, because God has already forgiven us, so you don't need to hold a grudge against yourself anymore. Accept God's mercy and take that forgiveness and forgive yourself. Love yourself enough to move on from the past. There's a song by Blue Tree, and if you've seen any of my other reflections, you'll know I really like Blue Tree at the minute. It does take me back to my gap year in Northern Ireland, because that's when I first heard of them and fell in love with them then. And recently that's just the band that I really like worshipping with. And one of their songs is Greater Things Are Yet to Come. And I just think, if we forgive ourselves and we accept God's love and God's mercy, then greater things will happen to us. There's no point in being bogged down and hindered by the past when God said it's done, it's finished. Just let it go. Let it go. And forgive yourself and love yourself enough to let that past go, so that you can move forward in what God is saying to you and asking of you. And so we can have that perfect relationship with God.